While a lot of my growth came from individual focus and decisions I made myself, I can say there have only been three people I can consider as a mentor. There is my current mentor, helping me out with my health, although they're helping me from a distance and only from time to time. But the other two were more involved, albeit very briefly, especially my second mentor. When I met them, they were juggling multiple commitments. They were working on publishing children's books, had a lawn care company, was providing coaching services, and, as I would later learn, were part of a network marketing company that strategically called itself a referral marketing company. Needless to say, that mentor was busy. And so, being someone who was juggling my own clients, wanting to get into YouTube yet again, and acting on several other ideas, I asked them for help on how I could be more productive. How could I get from saying I wanted to do things to actually getting stuff done? From there, my mentor did what any usual self help coach would do and gave me work. Since I was tight on cash, we decided I'd help them with their children's book and they would offer me coaching services. And boy, was that a waste of time. With them encouraging me in believing more in Jesus and Christianity, the conversations I had with them were anything but productive or on productivity. At one point, they asked me to join in on their network marketing idea, which I did as a customer for a brief period, mostly because they wouldn't shut up about how cheap they were getting certain products, which I thought were pretty affordable at the time. At the end of the day, I was dealing with a bad coach. But I wanted to bring this up because at the core of it all was a simple desire that we all have. Every one of us has goals and ambitions that we want to achieve. Every one of us wants to be productive. And while there are people willing to help out with this and offer great methods, they can be diamonds in the rough when compared to hustle culture that we're so used to seeing. That and bad coaches. If it's not hustle bros or those aforementioned coaches calling the shots, it's our fast-paced lifestyle that encourages us to work hard and long hours, among other elements that encourage that this is a good thing and that we should all be doing it. It's to the point that if we take a vacation or a break, we actually feel guilty about it. That, or we're using that time to catch up on various errands and chores on our days off instead. Even if you're not adopting the full creed of hustle culture, a lot of us, to some extent, have been indoctrinated into hustle culture and believe in this simple, convoluted mantra. Always be hustling. So what exactly does that mean? Truly. Whether it's hustling, grinding, or saying or reading some mantra like rise and grind, we as a society have grown accustomed to those words. Our office spaces or break rooms might have few of those posters or little figurines that imply that sort of messaging. If not that, then most of us are so used to it that I can say grind or grinding and people will immediately think that I'm talking about work and not some sexual or lewd act. That or coffee. Regardless, work and the act that it entails forms a great part of our overall identity as a human being. And steadily, we've been transitioning more to being more efficient with our work. We've been enhancing our skills at the job, and tools like AI and automation that came before it have come in to make our jobs a lot easier to perform, at least in some cases. But delving further past the simple tweaks to our workflow or simple productivity apps, we run into deeper hustle culture, an addictive and oftentimes strange space about what it means to work and what it truly means to always hustle. It's not so different from a cult where it praises specific people and encourages us to be more like them. It's a culture where they believe that the penultimate form of peak productivity is to always be hustling and always be finding more and more efficiencies in our work ethic and workflow. It's a culture that believes that once you found those specific things, you'll be able to get more out of life, achieve many great things all at once, and be the embodiment of peak productivity prowess. But today, I'm asking one simple thing. Is that really true? And if you know me, then the answer is a pretty obvious no, based on my research. However, my research has led me deeper into this culture and what it actually means to always be hustling, according to hustle culture. So let's talk about what this culture entails, why it's so bad and unhelpful, and how can we better define work for ourselves and have a better relationship with work and our jobs.
Work, work. Work, work.
As I've suggested in my video on hustle culture, like disappearing for 6 months, that this whole aspect of self-help is really weird. The methods are either vague, misleading, or outright ineffective due to the extreme that hustle culture embodies and encourages. Not only that, but the individuals that they look up to are people that I wouldn't necessarily say are productive individuals. For example, one person that's often praised for productivity prowess is Elon Musk. He's been on the record saying that he has worked over 80 hours per week. People herald him as this great and innovative mind because of his accomplishments and the fact that even with working so much, he still happens to have time to look after his kids and raise all 12 of them. Aw, that is so sweet of him. The only problem is that's a lie. The founding of Tesla wasn't by Musk's hand. He had other people around him doing all of the work for him. This also includes the rockets that he's been sending up into space. Based on his constant activity on X, which is crumbling even faster than Twitter was, and recently is now shut down in Brazil, I'd say he's spending more time on this dying platform and attending events and interviews than he is with his other companies and his kids. Even the previous CEO of Twitter said selling the platform to Musk was a terrible idea. It's hard for me to imagine that this individual is peak productivity or someone to look up to for guidance on how to be productive when one of his 12 kids talks about how terrible of a dad he is. The Twitter's former CEO is having buyer's remorse. Regular Tesla drivers are actively removing the logo from their car because they don't want to be associated with what the brand now attracts. And that same electric vehicle company has produced this fucking meme wagon of a vehicle on the whims of an egotistical rich billionaire's kid's vision on what the future might look like. Props on the kid for drawing that truck on that one day and sharing it with his dad. But out of the two of them, that kid was more productive than Daddy Musk has been. And while Musk is an extreme example, other rich individuals are not that much better. For reasons I'll explain in a little bit, the examples presented are not the greatest to build around. They're mostly used as the means of feigning success for the average person.
We have our imagination.
The reality of always be hustling or grinding are more like buzzwords in hustle culture. They're addictive, but when you read through the lines, they're more manipulative than you could imagine. They're more of a callback on how we used to work and hustle, and have since moved on as a generation continues to redefine what is appropriate in the workplace. What that grind or hustle mindset that hustle culture lives by entails a lot of old and regressive ways of thinking about work and approaching work. It's a desperate plea to return to the old ways, as it's the belief that those methods are better and more effective. In reality, they're not at all and are in fact worse in many regards. A good example for why it's bad is looking at the great resignation or the quiet quitting trend that's been going on right now. Otherwise called the big quit or great reshuffle, this happened during the pandemic when companies were fed up with having to work remotely and demanded people to return to work in the office. Even though by every metric, remote work was better for businesses and the employees themselves, it was this move that really put a ton of pressure on the workforce. On top of firing people who didn't show up to the office, poor bosses like Mr. Peak Productivity Elon Musk really made quitting a lot more appealing than sticking around.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
This really encapsulates some of the issues with hustle culture, as it might come off as a smart move to make. But for a lot of people, they've already moved on. Not to mention, not every person has the same sort of relationship to work as those who encourage to be working and to learn to work long hours. Beyond that, we begin to see a variety of issues that come from enforcing a specific view of work or to go back to previous methods of work. First of which is that it distracts us from our main goals while working. A good example of this is reading an article on how to stop procrastinating while you're in the middle of procrastinating. While the sentiment is good, it pulls us away from what we should be doing right now.
Ironic.
A lot of hustle culture rhetoric serves as more of a decoy and an opportunity for someone to suggest some kind of method or strategy to being more productive or how to procrastinate less. Some might even go as far as to be selling you a course or encouraging you to read more of their articles, or follow what I did and hire someone to coach you on how to be more productive. It simply creates an artificial problem, and the solution itself isn't that great. It often entails more work and thinking about work differently, which takes more time. The second reason that it's so bad is that the methods themselves don't address the real systemic problems that we are facing. My issue with getting productivity tips from people like Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, and Elon Musk is the fact that these are incredibly privileged white men. For Bezos, he makes $200,000 in a minute, while employees in Amazon warehouses are peeing in bottles. And his other rich buddies can have similar analogies for them. Zucks makes $9.6 million per hour, while his underlings are encouraging genocides, squashing free speech, and looking at so many naked people. Sorry, that was in bad taste. My point is no amount of overtime is going to make you money on the same level of Bezos or Zuckerberg, unless you somehow are able to Freaky Friday their bodies with them or some other weird thing. Unless you happen to get a small loan of $1 million from some rich relative, then trying to emulate them or pick up particular strategies from them is just pointless.
That wasn't flying. That was falling with style.
But in all of that hustle culture rhetoric, it conveniently leaves out the emerald mines and rich relatives. People would rather focus on Musk, reading a book on space engineering and now knows how to shoot rockets up into space, rather than recognize he has people around him that are just doing this job better than he is.
Jeez.
Or at least they would if he wasn't such a control freak and wanting to control every step of the way and impede on other people's work. And the final reason the always hustling mindset is so bad is that it could also cover up the fact that you might be running in place and not going anywhere. Work gives us this sense of progression, but if the work is more like busy work than actual progress, then it's not really work. It's just pointless. There's no purpose to it.
But what does that have to do with anything?
No. He's got a point.
When I asked for productivity tips from that coach so long ago, I wasn't expecting them to get onto this phone call that covered things that I already knew about and couldn't understand how they were all connected to productivity. Nor was I expecting to be roped into another network marketing company. And yet, that's where it went to, because the guru didn't listen to what I had to say or respect my knowledge and understanding of the self-help industry at the time. They felt it appropriate to cover that fact by changing the subject and giving me other work to do, to instill in me a sense that I was being helpful to them rather than being productive. To be fair to the guru, having work and setting deadlines can generally encourage us to work, and also their work helped me break up some of the other writing work that I was doing. But I wasn't exactly getting much out of it. I wasn't getting much out of the lessons that they had for me or that they planned on. At the end of the day, this kind of rhetoric encourages us to keep on pushing through. It's a pull yourself up by the bootstraps kind of idea. And while that tough talk can be helpful and appropriate, you have to be very strategic about when to be using it and how to be using it. The current setup with work is backwards. If it's not the nose to the grindstone kind of mentality, then it's the romanticization of work. It's doing more work you love as a treat or as a break after accomplishing another important task.
More.
That idea is unhealthy in my mind, and it's led me to my current relationship of work. It's necessary for sure, but it shouldn't be our entire identity. We can work hard, but that definition varies based on our own individual views of what hard is. Hard, as the Hassel Bros imply, sounds like running a marathon or putting together a political campaign. But it doesn't have to be like that. In other cases, hard can look like power walking that marathon. It can be running for mayor or a provincial or state office. Still challenging, but likely more bearable and not as intensive. The objective of work is to build something meaningful, and depending on the situation, you don't need to build that meaningful thing immediately. There's benefits to taking your time. For one, it can help you deduce whether something is actually needed or a waste of your time right now. That was honestly one of the biggest takeaways that I got from my second mentor. They never directly told me that or instilled it in me, but it was something I reached on my own and did so by taking a step back and looking at myself. I didn't need someone to guide me on being productive, as I could manage that just fine on my own. I needed to learn how I worked. I needed to learn how to get myself into a work mode. I needed to learn how to enter a flow state. And I did all of those things, clearly, since putting these videos together does take work and effort. Maybe not my best work, but it's what I can manage to do right now. And I believe that others can do the same thing that I'm doing. Not necessarily making videos and writing articles, but you get the idea, just general work.
Work.
You don't need hustle bros screaming in your ear to pump you up, nor do you need motivational speeches to sway you to get something done. All you need to do is work at your own pace, and that can be determined by looking at what's going on in your life right now and how much time can you actually put into that and reasonably work. That also takes a lot of time, but it's honestly well worth it than subscribing to the just work or always be hustling mindset that these hustle bros encourage and are just shoving in our faces these days. And that's all that I really wanted to be talking about with hustle culture and always be hustling sort of mentality. Thank you guys so much for watching all of this video. Don't forget to go and leave a like on this video as well, and to subscribe to my channel for more updates in the future. Thank you guys so much.